What's going on, broskies? YCS just finished wrapping up. Phantom Nightmare just dropped, so we got a lot of things going on in the Yu-Gi-Oh world right now. And it's crazy to see what players are actually playing right now and what they're trying to go ahead and dethrone Fire Kings and Snake Eyes. So I thought right now would be the perfect time to go ahead and make a meta tier list for you guys to see what is the best deck you should be playing, maybe where your deck currently is ranking. The current format right now is going pretty strong right now with Fire Kings, Snake Eyes being 50% top played at the moment right now. And that's not really that diverse. So hopefully going into the next format with a lot of support coming out for a lot of new decks right now, we are going to be expecting hopefully a more diverse format. But will it be enough to go ahead and dethrone Snake Eyes and Fire King? We just gotta wait to find out. So let's go ahead and get right into this tier list and see what the current format is looking like. So I got this broken up in 4 different categories at the moment. Of course, we got the go big or go home, because you know that's exactly what we're gonna be doing with these decks. We got the second best. You're always gonna need a runner-up second best deck that could have made it but didn't really actually make it, and you're gonna have to go home knowing that. Next, we got King of Locals, my boys, because that's exactly what you're gonna be. If you already know, you know what this category is all about. You're gonna have fun beating everybody at your local card shop, and you're gonna feel like the top of the world, but the moment you go ahead and enter regionals and YCS, it's a wrap for you. And then we just got having fun, because that's exactly what you're gonna be doing with this deck. Just having fun, and you're not gonna be caring if you're gonna be winning or losing. You're just going out and you're gonna play this deck because you love it and you just want to keep playing it. You never know, if you pop off with a win, yo, that's gonna make your day right there. And if you're gonna be losing, hey, you know what you were gonna expect going into it. So let's start off with the two most obvious options right now here, and that's going to be Snake Eyes and Fire King. So we already know they're going to be in the go big or go home category because they are currently tier 0. And for you guys who don't know, right now we are in a tier 0 format, which means it is unprecedented what the current format is looking like with these decks. Now, it is a whole video I can go into itself explaining what exactly tier 0 format is, but just know for a fact that these decks at the moment, what they're able to do and establish on the board and on either turn is just unbelievable. And the fact that they're able to set up so many cards and the cards in their decks have so many different meaningful plays, it is just like beyond a different level that all the other decks currently are going at the moment. So obviously everybody knows Snake Eyes and Fire King are the best decks at the moment, and there's so many reasons why, but I'm actually gonna go ahead and put Fire King Snake Eyes #1 over pure Snake Eyes. And the reason why is because I feel like with Fire King Snake Eyes, you actually have a lot more opportunities for more plays, especially going into this format. It's going to be a very droll heavy format, and I've been saying this for many months now with all the cards coming out. Everybody's either playing droll or siding droll, and that's going to basically kind of make and break your plays when it comes to Snake Eyes. Now, I feel like Fire King is honestly the best route to take this deck because you're going to have more opportunities to play when they're going to go ahead and hand trap you. I have a whole video I'm coming out soon explaining to you the exact right moments to snipe those cards that you're going to want to hit before they just go ahead and establish an entire board that's going to be really, really hard to break and set up for next turn. Now, with that being said, I feel like you can definitely get hand trapped several different times and play through certain things like Droll and Nib with the Fire King Snake Eye deck. But when you're going to go ahead and play pure Snake Eye, you do run into a few problems. Yes, you're going to be somewhat prone to Nib a little bit more because you don't have the versatility of Fire Kings. And Droll is going to be your biggest factor dealing with pure Snake Eyes. Now, there are obviously ways you can go ahead and play around it, but if you do open up with a hard hand or certain place you want to go and they just Droll you first turn, that's definitely going to hit a lot harder on a pure Snake Eyes versus a Fire King Snake Eyes. So that's why I'm going to be placing them in this exact order right here. Next, we got Dinos. So I'm already going to go ahead and just put Dinos, honestly, right in the just having fun, and I'm gonna already go ahead and upset a lot of my Dino players out there. Just hear me out here with this deck. Dinos is amazing, especially with the new supports that they just got from Maze of Millennia, and the deck definitely needs all the support it possibly can, and we know there's going to be obviously more support coming out in the future. But with that being said, Dinos is always a good deck, and it has a lot of mechanics going for it, but it's not enough to really compete in this coming format with the amount of crazy plays and hand traps going for it. It's not a board-breaking deck establishing crazy monsters with a bunch of Omni Negates and Floodgates or anything like that necessarily. It's definitely a deck that's going to be a lot of fun playing with, and you're going to be able to pop off some really good plays, but you can't really expect to just climb the ladder and get as far as you want to get with this deck. Next, we got Voiceless Voice. So this is one of the newest decks that just recently came out, and I honestly have a lot of high hopes for this deck. It is a really good deck that has a lot of potential. For one, you can go ahead and splash a lot of engines into this deck. So it's kind of like a newer version of Tearlaments, where this deck is very, very small in regards to the engine and the amount of different engines and cards you can go ahead and splash into this deck to just make it so unique to your personal playstyle, or to potentially counter whatever locals you're going to, is just really, really good, because not every deck can play the way this deck and Tearlaments can play. So it is a very versatile deck. On top of that, you do actually play an Omni Negate in this deck, and that is really, really good, especially going into a new format. And Omni Negate is always welcome because there's so many things you have to deal with getting over. It's never the easiest thing to deal with when you're going second, so being able to establish a potential Omni Negate and disrupt some plays is always a good thing. So with that being said, I feel like it is currently going to be King of Locals, and I'm going to leave that here for now. The reason why is because I know it's going to be getting a lot of support going into the future, and once it does get that support and we have a lot more time to experiment with the deck, I definitely believe it's going to be in the second best category. If not, maybe even go big or go home. It really depends on the support that we're going to be getting and how spicy you can actually get with this deck. Next, we got Centur-Ion, my boys. And if you guys didn't check out my first tier list video I ever made, you should definitely check it out, because I called it with this deck. Everyone was hyping it up, saying this is going to be a tier 1 next meta changing deck, and it has a lot going for it. And it did do a lot of things at the time. It did get a lot of plays, but it never really topped and, you know, surpassed what it had going in regards to competition at the time. The Labyrinth, Rescue Waste, it had Puurly to go up against, and Unchained. Now, it is a good deck, but at the end of the day, the only thing it really has going for it is Calamity's Lock. Besides that, it's not doing anything board-breaking worthy or anything to really disrupt the format. And with that being said, I feel like it's kind of lackluster. So just like my last video, I'm definitely going to go ahead and say you potentially got a King of Locals right here. And I don't really see it going up in the future that crazy into a higher tier. If anything, it may just stay exactly where it is now or potentially drop. And you can definitely see that Centur-Ion has drastically changed in the current format, because look at the percentage 2 months ago to now, how many players are being represented in YCS and regionals with Centur-Ion. It definitely speaks for itself that the deck popped off really hard. It had a lot of expectations, but I had a feeling it was not going to be able to meet those, and I was right. Next, we got Flame Swordsman, my boys. Now, Flame Swordsman is such a good deck. I absolutely love it, and it would be one of the best decks 8 years ago. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a really good deck, and it has a lot going for it, with a lot of badass looking cards. Because, like, if you haven't seen me doing the unboxing, check out the artwork on these cards. This ain't nothing to sleep on. They are really, really nice looking cards. The deck does play like an old school beatdown deck, and that is good and bad in certain ways. It is able to establish a lot of strong presence on the board with a lot of high beat stick, but besides that, it doesn't really have much support going for it, and it doesn't really have a crazy follow-up and counters to the current format hand trap. I feel like the best competitive version of this deck is to play with the Infernoble engine, because that way you're able to actually establish a full Infernoble board, and then you'll be able to have a high beat stick monster from the Swordsman engine. On top of that, it does make the deck competitive, and you guys already know what Infernoble is capable of if played correctly. I definitely currently think that King of Locals would be the best option, and I will definitely go ahead and place it in front of Centur-Ion, because I just think that it has a lot going for it, and with the right player, you'll be surprised how much that deck can possibly pop off. Next, we got Dark World, and I'm just going to go ahead and just put Dark World straight into just having fun, because that's exactly what you're going to be doing with this deck. It is a good deck. Everybody loves Dark World. It's one of the oldest decks we currently have in the format that is actually somewhat competitive, but the deck falls off very heavy once you actually go ahead and play against some more higher tier decks. With the current format that we have going with it, with Drolling Lock, Nib, Ash, and Veiler, it kind of destroys Dark World and what they got going for them. So it is hard to really answer a lot of hand traps, and because of that, you're kind of stuck with limited amount of lines you can really take, and you gotta hope that you're going first to be able to pop off those, but then going second, It really depends on your side deck and what you're playing and who you're really playing against. And it kind of does come down a little bit to luck with this deck, because it doesn't have that strong presence and board breaking effect. And next we got Branded. Everyone's love and hate relationship with this deck is crazy, and I'm surprised how well this deck is doing after so many years since it was first released. Branded has so many different variants, and I think it really depends on the player will determine what the best option is for that deck. And of course, I got Chimera coming up right after, so I'm going to be rating them both in the same way, where I feel like they both will be able to go into second best currently at the moment with this format. And the reason why is because Branded and Chimera have a lot going for it. And I'm going to be specifically putting Branded Despia first and then Branded Chimera second. The reason why I mentioned, just like in my last video, Branded Despia has a lot of outs going for it right now that you're going to have to answer in the current format, such as Mary J that's able to banish a body on the board and just completely disrupt the potential player's board right there. On top of that, it does have a lot of other options going first that can punish your opponent depending on what deck they're playing if they can't answer it correctly. Same thing could be said with Branded Chimera, but with Branded Chimera, you always have to remember at the back of your mind that you're going to kind of be locked into certain lines once you start taking them, and you honestly don't really have the flexibility that you do with Despia Branded. You could go the same route with Branded Synchro, but it's kind of the same thing as Branded Chimera, where if your lines that you take don't pop off, you're kind of stuck and you can't really recycle and do as much as Branded Despia is. The deck is getting some more support. It's not going to be nothing crazy that's going to be able to elevate the deck even higher, so I feel like this is where the deck's going to be staying for a while, and that's really good and nothing to sleep on, because you can really do a lot with this deck, and it's several years old and it's still very competitive, so you can definitely go ahead and pick this deck up and you'll be amazed how far it can take you. Now you got everyone's favorite deck, Floowandereeze, and it's crazy how long this deck has been out and how absurd a deck like this Konami made to be so viable in so many formats consistently, and it's sub $50. There's not much going for this deck, but because there's not much going for it, that's what makes it so good. This deck can easily answer so many current decks in the format, including Fire King at the moment. It has so many counters and normal summons, don't even need the special summons. There's so many different things that that can do, and I definitely think that Floowandereeze is a second best. There's so many answers this deck has for a lot of decks in the current format, and it will actually give a lot of decks a lot of trouble, especially with the statue cards it currently has. Yes, it definitely got hit on the ban list by removing one of the statues, but the deck can still answer a lot of the situation that's currently going on in the format. So if you want the best bang for your buck deck to go ahead and have a lot of fun, be very competitive, and just piss off all your friends, Floowandereeze is definitely the deck to go ahead and get. Next we got Labyrinth, and I feel like Labyrinth is always going to be a competitive deck for now at least. It was insanely good in the last format, and I feel like it kind of got knocked down a little bit in this current format that we're into because a lot has drastically changed, especially with Fire King Snake Eye. Now it does have a lot of answers to certain decks, and it is very, very competitive, especially with the new Dark Statue card that is able to play. It can easily go ahead and recycle and continuously play that card to affect a lot of boards. But the main reason why this deck is so competitive now that everyone was expecting was Transaction Rollback. And that single card definitely made this deck a lot more viable in this current format. I definitely feel like Labyrinth will go ahead and be second best right there, right by Branded Despia, because it can actually go ahead and answer a lot of cards in the current format, but it's nothing that's going to be able to like pop off and disrupt the entire board. That's why I feel like it's going to be second best right behind Despia Branded. Next we got Kashtira, and Kashtira is always going to be a love-hate relationship for this deck because the amount of people I see play this deck even after the ban list and still able to pop off so many different plays by splashing a lot of different engines in there. It's still crazy. It's always good to see, and it's definitely very, very annoying. But with that being said, Kashtira is still a very good deck. It's fun. It's not going to be doing anything crazy anytime soon because once it got hit with the ban list, it kind of killed the deck in general. And the deck is still very, very fun. At this point, I feel like we're just stripping this deck for parts by taking friendware and splashing that into every deck everybody can possibly get their hands on and making their decks really good. But for the Kashtira engine itself, I wouldn't really say it's nothing too crazy. You can definitely go ahead and pick up the deck because the price dropped significantly ever since the ban list, and you can have a lot of fun disrupting and breaking boards still. The odds of you actually popping off are significantly decreased, but you're still going to be able to be doing a lot of crazy plays, and if your opponent is not prepared for you, you're going to be able to have a good time. So I'm definitely going to go ahead and put Kashtira in King of Locals in front of Centur-Ion because I still feel like it is able to do a lot more than Centur-Ion has to offer at this time. Next we got Puurly, a deck that was kind of like basically on par with Floowandereeze, that was able to stay viable for so long by not really doing much. The core engine for this deck was able to keep it alive through so many different formats and disrupt every single deck and answer them significantly. But now the route that we're kind of going at with this deck, it finally fell off drastically to the point where I don't really see much Puurly players or make impact with this deck. The deck is definitely fun. You can do a lot of interruptions with it. I don't really see it's worth picking up or even playing unless you are a diehard furry fan. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this right in the just having fun category, and I feel like that's where Puurly should stay. It had a long time to shine, and now those cats gotta go to sleep because those 9 lives are up. Next we got Rescue Ace, the old king of the king. Now how have you fallen? Rescue Ace has significantly got dropped ever since Airlift got hit hard, and because of that one card, people was trying to hold on to Rescue Ace for dear life. Unfortunately, we all know Rescue Ace significantly fell down the ladder ranking, and it's not nowhere as good as it used to. Now you can definitely go ahead and still make the deck very viable by go ahead and splashing in Snake Eyes if you want to try that option, and be very experimental with a few other engines. But at the current state where Rescue Ace is at the time, I'm gonna go ahead and put it potentially as just having fun, and I'm gonna go ahead and actually put it as number 1 because it's not gonna be going ahead and disrupting all the boards and making a lot of crazy plays. But I feel like the deck is still going to have a lot of potential. It's significantly slower now. There's a lot of ways to count it now that we know that Airlift is hit. We're going to go ahead and be able to snipe cards correctly. And with the amount of 9 to 15 hand traps that's currently in the format being played, I feel like Rescue Ace is definitely going to be stopped a lot before they're able to pop off. Next we got Tearlaments, and I feel like this deck is always surviving everything that's being thrown at it, and it's always somehow managed to stay on top. Because this deck got hit on the ban list with Kaldak and YUGIOH, the deck was still able to persevere even through that. That's one good thing about Tearlaments. Just like Labyrinth, you can splash so many different engines in there to always make it work, but if something gets hit or it's no longer viable in the current format, you just simply remove it and put something else in. And I feel like always going to be a competitive, viable option potentially, and somewhat budget friendly depending on what engine you want to run on it. So I'm definitely going to go ahead and put Tearlaments behind Branded Despia because it can always have an answer to a lot of decks, and I feel like people kind of sleep on Tearlaments a little too much, and they should definitely go ahead and try to get in that kitchen and start cooking up all those spicy recipes because Tearlaments will surprise you. And I personally wouldn't be surprised to see Tearlaments start racking up those wins and getting on those leaderboards soon. And next we finally got Yubel, the latest and greatest deck released in Phantom Nightmare. Even though Yubel just got released, we already know that Yubel is expected to have more support in the future, and that's going to drastically change the format for Yubel. In the current build with the deck right now, Super Poly is definitely your best friend with this deck, and you will be able to disrupt so many decks in the current format because Super Poly is always everyone's favorite go-to card, and it definitely works for this deck. Basing Yubel right now as a pure Yubel deck, I do not think it's going to be very high, but the best option for this deck that's going to be making it playable is actually Branded Yubel, because you are actually going to be able to super poly into many different cards, and you will have your standard Branded Despia fusion cards to go into that's going to be able to pop off a lot of plays. If you're not a fan of the Branded engine, you want to go ahead and play a different route, because people who hate the Branded engine, and I completely understand you, you could go about another route with Unchained. It is a completely different play style, and you're going to have a lot of fun with that. It may not be as viable as Branded, but it is another alternative if you still want to go ahead and have fun with an old school deck like Yubel and still make it viable in the current format. But with that being said, I definitely think Yubel is going to be potentially, as a pure, it will maybe be all the way down here, right behind Dinos. But if you want to go branded Yubel, I would actually go ahead and put it right in front of Chimera. So you can take that with a grain of salt, depending on your playstyle and what you want to go ahead. I'm very curious to see how well Yubel is going to develop in the upcoming future with the new support. And I personally used to be a Yubel player myself. I love the deck. It's good to finally see that it's getting the support and help it always needed. But maybe Yubel might come back and might be a top tier deck. Fingers crossed, because I would love to play Yubel again. But if not, hey, I'm always happy to see all the old school decks getting the support. So that's it, my boys. I just want to go ahead and touch on a few top tier decks and new decks currently being played in the format, and just kind of rank them to see where exactly we are at right now. Of course, the go big and go home is kind of dominated by these two specifically, and everything else is basically second best. But like I said, we are in a tier 0 format, so it makes sense. Now, what the future holds, we don't know. A lot of these decks are going to be having more support and more cards coming out in the future that is going to be able to splash into it and potentially disrupt the format. But until then, this is what we're working with, so we're just gonna have to enjoy it. If you are a Fire King Snake Eye or just a pure Snake Eye player, leave your comments below, let me know, because you know, much love to my peoples out there. And I will of course be doing a deck breakdown and a combo list for you guys in the future. That is all I got for you today, my broskis. Smash that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up, hit that notification, and I'll catch you on the flip side.